Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here and welcome to B-Ball Breakdown. I am so excited to have Dwight Jaynes, who is the NBA Blazers insider for NBC Sports Northwest and also a friend of the breakdown, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. I've been in for a long time.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that we can connect here because it's always great to see you up on Twitter and on TV talking about the Blazers. And I thought what we could do, this is actually, we're honoring a very special season for the Blazers. Is that right?
Yeah, it is number 50 for this franchise, and they're going to celebrate that throughout the season, bringing back former players, popular guys. It promises to be quite a season. They're even bringing back the uniforms that they wore in the championship season, which were unique uniforms, and they haven't really worn them since the championship.
Wow. Well, we got to get Zach Collins or someone to grow a ponytail in honor of Bill Walton, I think. Now, I don't want to age you. I hope you don't take this as an insult, but it sounds like you were actually around during the 77 season when they won their title. Is that correct?
Yeah, Nick, I was just a young high school sports writer in those days, but our sports editor was pretty sharp, and he thought, this is the biggest thing that's ever happened in Portland. I want every guy on the staff over there to do some sort of story. My assignment for that game was to do a sidebar on Daryl Dawkins, who at that time was all in on Planet Lovetron and all the stuff. You got to Google it, but he was pretty flaky in those days, and that was my sidebar. It would have been a great sidebar had Philly won, but since Philadelphia lost that final game, Daryl Dawkins didn't have a whole lot to say, so that sidebar was kind of short.
That's too bad. Well, we got more Chocolate Thunder after that, and then unfortunately he's not with us today. But let's talk about your memories of what it was like. Were you at the clinching game when they won the title?
I was. Yeah, it was quite a scene, Nick. You know what strikes me about that series is how good Philadelphia was. People don't have a remembrance of, that was the year after the ABA dispersal draft, and I recall the quote, George McGinnis, the great George McGinnis from ABA days, found out he ended up in Philadelphia, and his quote was, "Oh my God, me and Doc on the same team," and that was true. And then they had Caldwell Jones in his prime, they had Doug Collins. They had a terrific team, and I thought the Trailblazers were a very good team to beat that team. I think the big edge the Blazers had, frankly, was Jack Ramsey on the sidelines, who did a great job with that team and really was innovative for his time. With what they did on the fast break and their turnouts and the way they played offensively was, I think, groundbreaking for that time in basketball.
Wow, it's not often, even though this is a coaching channel, that we get to hear the phrase turnouts and talk about Jack Ramsey. So do you want to quickly break that down for us so we can understand why that was revolutionary?
I don't know that anybody did a lot of that at the time. There was a lot of secondary break stuff where, they ran as much as they could, which most teams did in that era, Nick. The games were pretty high scoring. But they did really well in early offense after they got the ball up the floor and took advantage of teams at that time who had big centers who couldn't get down the floor with Walton. Great outlet passer. He'd outlet pass and then beat his guy down the floor, and you get that trailer action with him coming through the lane. And they got a lot of easy buckets off what they did in those days.
So what do you think the turning point was in the series and allowed them to overcome such amazing talent on the Philadelphia side to win in 6 games?
Well, a lot of people will look back and say that the turning point was a fight between Daryl Dawkins and Maurice Lucas, and you can Google that, and it's an eye-opener, Nick, because of the lack of security in the building. There's fans on the floor, players on the floor. It's just chaos on the floor. But Lucas actually hit Dawkins from behind, and it didn't even seem to faze Dawkins. He just turned around and started a slow walk toward Lucas. But then the Blazers lost the first 2 games of that series and came home facing an 0-2 deficit. But before Game 3, Lucas went over during player introductions and shook Dawkins' hand. And for some reason, that seemed to shake up the Sixers a little bit. I don't think they quite knew what hit them, but I think I'm not a big believer in that kind of stuff. I think it's more basketball stuff, and I think once the Blazers got home, got a little rest, that they were able to just play their game, which was what they did at that time. You hear teams all the time, we just need to play our game. When they played their game, they were pretty tough to beat.
So do you have a memory of, like, as the seconds ticked off at the end, it became clear they were going to win? What was that feeling like in the stadium?
Well, the funny thing was the Blazers had a nice little advantage going down the stretch of the game, but blew it. And the Sixers actually had a shot at tying the game. George McGinnis missed a wide open 15-footer at the buzzer. And so you didn't know till the very end. And then the place went crazy. And Walton took off his uniform top and threw it in the stands. And some guy climbed up on top of the backboard. And it was just craziness in there.
Where were you at that point?
I was trying to make my way back to the Philadelphia locker room through a sea of humanity, but it was not as bad as it would be today, because in those days the media got to sit courtside, you remember, and it's not that way anymore.
Well, let's move on to our next seminal moment in the Trailblazers' history, which we go to the Houston Rockets, Portland Trailblazers in the playoffs. And we had a pretty intense series. It was really fun back and forth. I can even recall LaMarcus Aldridge, just going off in various times. But we ended up having a Game 6 in Portland, and unclear what was going to happen. Certainly, if it went back to Game 7 in Houston, it looked like a dicey proposition at best. So just walk us through what that was like. Were you there when we see Damian Lillard, clap his hands a few times and make some magic?
Yeah, I was, of course, Nick. The interesting thing about that is you got the feeling that if the Blazers didn't take care of business at home in Game 6, they weren't going to be able to go to Houston and win. They had won there previously and actually won the first 2 games there and had seemingly controlled the series, but it got away from them a little bit. And I thought the series rested on Damian's last-second shot. And it was interesting, too, Nick, because the out-of-bounds play they ran was a great out-of-bounds play. And they had used it during the season, which, in retrospect, kind of surprised me that it was so effective in that situation. Because if you had scouted them, I think you'd know they're going to go there. They had to go to Damian. That's the guy who's going to make the shot. And Damian's pet spot in those days especially was that spot from the left wing out there, pretty deep on the left side. Not as deep as he would shoot later in his career, but a deep 3 from the left side was his pet shot. And I thought at the time, if he can get to that shot, then you have a chance. And the way it worked out, he got a much better open look than he probably should have at that stage of a game, because after the inbound, he has no time to pass. 5 guys could rush him. Whoever is close, get to him, because there's no time for anything else. It was 0.9 on the clock when the ball was inbound.
It's funny. I wanted to also say that in 2014, he might have been benefiting from the fact that we hadn't quite gotten to the complete three-point era. And so perhaps they were thinking, they're going to lob it, try and get a tie. That was still sort of in their mindsets back then, whereas it feels like now it's a no-brainer. And even though I don't know how much a no-brainer it is, they're going to go for the 3 more often than not, it feels like. So where were you sitting at this point when this play was unfolding?
I had moved down. What we do nowadays is in the waning moments of a game, we move down out of the press section into the grandstand to get a closer look and to get closer to the locker room when it ends. And in those days, I was doing a hit from the court when the game ended, so I had to get ready for that. But I had a really good view of that shot being down there close. And, now it wouldn't be anything now, Nick, because we've seen him make last-second shots so many times that it wouldn't even be a thing nowadays.
Right. So, what was the energy like? Was it shot? I can't even remember exactly. The ball goes in. There must have been this moment of everyone's breath being taken away, and then all of a sudden it just deafening, I imagine, right?
Yeah, for sure. And his teammates rushed him, of course, and he did a little march around the court. And he actually went over to the scorer's table and picked up the microphone and yelled "Rip City" real loud into the microphone, and everybody loved that, of course. And then he left the court, but there was craziness in that building in the Moda Center at that time.
Which brings us to probably the most seminal moment I think we've had in Blazers history, and certainly in the modern history here, which is OKC, Portland, Dame again. And probably Dame bringing the ball up. I can remember this one because this was last year. Audacious, I think, is the term, right? I don't know if there's any other word to describe it.
Well, yeah, and Paul George after the game famously said that's a bad shot. And the one thing I learned in this league real early covering this league is it's not a bad shot when you make it. And there's a lot of bad shots taken in this league, and guys make them with quite regularity. A coach the Blazers once had, Mike Schuler, told me that. He said, Dwight, when I came into this league, I would look at guys and say, that's a bad shot. And then the guy made it 8 times in a row, and I said, that's a pretty good shot. Yeah, and it depends on the guy taking it more than anything else. And for Damian Lillard in that situation, that shot was taken with great confidence, and he knew it was going in, and it did go in. So it was not a good shot. It was a great shot.
Okay, where were you for this shot?
Same situation. I was in the other end of the court, on the same side of the court, but the other end. And, I wasn't sure it was going to go in. And I remember thinking, I'd rather see him take the ball to the basket because he's gotten really good at that. Didn't need 3 to win the game. 1 would have won you the game. And that's a dicey shot. But it's also a shot that a guy builds a career on, builds a reputation on. And it was the perfect ending for that series. What a lot of people never saw is he got mobbed by his teammates. He went to the ground. But before he did that, he waved goodbye to OKC as they walked off the floor, and it was kind of a final sign-off to the battle that he and Westbrook were having throughout the series. Yeah.
Now, just to comment on that for a second, like that was very real, right? I mean, you were on the court. What were you seeing from close up that indicated that there was a real personal thing going on between them?
Well, what you saw was Westbrook talking a lot of trash to Dame, and occasionally Dame answering, which he's not usually prone to do, but he came back at him a few times, and I could tell Westbrook was getting under his skin a little bit, but I'm sure the Blazers were getting under Westbrook's skin pretty good too.
Now, you're a Portland native. You've been around the team for, all this time. I know you're supposed to be impartial, but I have to imagine, are you jumping up and down a little bit in those moments when he hits that shot?
I'm old school, Nick. No, I didn't jump up and down. No, I just go there and do the games. We're professionals, and I kind of think I'm one of the last of those types that isn't a rooter, to tell you the truth.
How many other guys do you even know that's still around the league that are covering other teams that are from, the similar background, the similar era?
Not as many as used to be. Most of them have retired by now, and I'm still hanging on and still trying to do what I do because I love what I do. But yeah, it's being changed, and bloggers have replaced a lot of writers, and bloggers by nature kind of come up through the idea of being a fan and rooting for a team, and a lot of them now even work for teams. So it's changed a lot, but I like to think that I still call it as I see it, and certainly the reaction I get from front offices once in a while indicates that they'd like me to be a little more of a homer.
Well, listen, the one thing you left out about why you're there and you're still doing it is that you're great at what you do, and that's why you're still around and doing it. So I'm glad to have you on. It's always great to talk to you, Dwight, and always great to see you out there and feeling well and doing well. So you'll have to come back on. We'll talk some more.
Yeah, Nick, and I'd just like to say, keep up the good work. I keep coming back to the site, not because I know you and like you, which I do, but it's just you guys are doing quality work there, and I'm looking forward to more of the explanations on the travel rule because fans need that. We need that. I need that. There's just a lot going on the website there that people are interested in, so I try to steer people there as much as I can.
Well, thank you so much, especially when we got Dame and CJ out there doing all their magic. We got to keep our eye on what really is going on and make sure it's legal. So thanks so much, Dwight, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for watching this. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Dwight?
Always.